We are now the last chapter of this Maimer discourse from the Tzemach Tzedek in his Sefer HaMitzvos, Derech Mitzvosecha, where he gives the Hasidic reason for many of the mitzvahs. And we're in the middle of the mitzvah of Achdus Hashem, which is the unity of God. This mitzvah comes after his very lengthy discourse called Hamonas Elikus, which is the belief, the faith in God. Then comes this mitzvah of Achdus Hashem, where he explains what the Jew is required to believe as far as the oneness and the unification of God. As the verse says, Shema Yisrael, listen, hear, O Israel, God is our God, God is one. And we spoke about Memale and about Soivev and about Shituf, that a Jew is absolutely prohibited from having Shituf, which means to attribute anything to associate anything with God, but rather he is the one and only, and there's no partnership, and there are no other gods that work along with him, etc. Whereas a Ben Noyach, who obviously one of, if not the primary, of the 7 mitzvahs Ben Noyach, is Avodah Zarah. It's the prohibition against worshiping anything other than God. However, if he believes in God ultimately as the God of gods, and he has a misunderstanding, and he's making a big mistake, and he associates and relates to God in a way of shituf, according to the halacha, we say that that is not a capital offense for a ben noyach, and he could technically get away with that mistake. And the reason for that is because to believe in such a high level of God, of the unification, comes when you associate it with the level of soivev kol almin, and the nations of the world cannot be held up to such a high bar. And then we got into a lot of very deep stuff in Chassidus, and now we're up to Ois Gimel, number 3. So on page Samach Beis, Amud Aleph, page 62a. Otherwise, it would be page 123. Ve'alpi oimek yesoid habal shem tov nishmaso yeden. Bezoyar HaKadosh. And according to the deep, fundamental understanding of the great Baal Shem Tov in the Kabbalah of the Zohar, Yisparesh will be explained, Inyan Zeh, this concept that we're talking about, Biyoiser, much more, Hafle Vafele, in a very wondrous way, in an amazingly wondrous way, Bebir Inyan HaYichud, in explaining this concept according to the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. This is a fundamental concept in Chassidus, in the unification of God. Milvad hayichud b'shefa halikus kanal. Besides the yichud, this unification of the godly energy which we spoke about earlier, oid zois, but furthermore, in addition to that, she'ein oid mamish, there literally is nothing other than God. Now, this concept is really introduced by Chassidus. This is one of the innovations of the Baal Shem Tov, and there are a number of things that the Baal Shem Tov, in his teachings of Chassidus, introduced to the world, to the Jewish world, to the observant world, to the learned, religious Jewish world, that beforehand they just were totally unaware of. And it's a godly revelation that God has revealed to the world through this great righteous saint, this tzaddik, the Baal Shem Tov. And amongst those things is this very, very deep understanding and recognition that there literally is nothing other than God. That wasn't a given. The old way of looking at it is that God is the creator, and that everything is dependent on him, and he created That's basically how it was. And interesting to note, just parenthetically, that the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach brings in that the Rambam actually is making all of these statements. All of these novel ideas of Chassidus, which the Baal Shem Tov introduced, and the Rebbe's subsequently following the Baal Shem Tov, his successors, actually the Rambam already says, and the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach brings it out in the words of the Rambam. But otherwise, if not for that, people don't really think that that's what the Rambam means. But now we know that, yes, in fact, the Rambam already said it back then. Be that as it may. Nothing exists, afilu banivroyim, even in the created entities. What this means to say, shal piha emes, according to the truth, ein anivroyim b'chinas yesh v'davar. All of the created entities, all of the creatures that God created, are not an entity. They are not of substance. As it appears to us in our eyes. In other words, our observance, our perception, our view is false. Because to see the created entity as an entity for itself, that's from our perspective. That's because we don't see the godly energy. If we would see the godly energy in everything, we would then see the truth. And it's not just that, oh, we don't see what makes it tick. No. It's not that you see how a machine is working, you just don't see the motor or all the intrinsic insides of it. That's not what it is. In this case, it's God. So if you would only see the godliness that's making it exist, you would see how it truly doesn't exist. But because we don't see the truth, we don't see the godly energy which is making it exist, all we see is the outcome, which is the falsehood, the fallacy of its existence. We say, oh, here's a world, here I am, here's a table, here's, everything that's around me. But from the perspective of the godly vitality, which is in fact giving us our life, from that perspective, we are absolutely nullified in existence. We don't exist. And we are literally zero, non-entity. Keziv HaShemesh, Keshu Beguv Kadur HaShemesh. Like the example of the ray of the sun when it's inside the actual body, the ball of the sun. That as the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, in the second section of the Tanya, known as Shar HaYichud VaEmunah, the Alter Rebbe there gives the parable, the whole thing to explain this concept, which is based on the Baal Shem Tov's teaching. The Alter Rebbe spends 12 chapters explaining this whole thing. He gives over there the parable of the sun, the physical sun, and the rays of the sun. The ray of the sun is only an entity and only exists outside of the sun. It has all of the features to it. It is light, it gives heat, and all the other things that you can study about the sun by analyzing its ray is only when it's outside of the sun. Inside the sun, there are no rays. It loses its identity completely and totally. And over there, the Alter Rebbe says, "She'ilu nitzna reshus la'ayin lireis chulu," that if only the eye was granted permission to see, Yuyan Sham, take a look over there, what he says. And if the human eye would be able to see the truth, then we would see the higher level of unification, that there is nothing other than God, and we wouldn't see the world as we see it now. We would see that it's just an expression of God. V'nimtza, so what comes out from this is, she'ein oid shum mitzius klal. There is no additional, there is no other existence, entity at all. Zulas mitzius yisbarich, other than his existence. God and God alone is all that exists. And behold, this, what we just explained, this philosophy, Hayichud Hagamur. This is the absolute union that we're talking about, the oneness. Ukemaimer, and like the expression, Atahu ad shaloi nivra ha'olam umi shenivra b'shaveh mamish. In the morning prayers, in the preliminary part of the prayers in the morning, so we have over there a special prayer that we say, you are from before the world was created, and you are after the world was created. The exact same words, you are. It's exactly the same. He's totally the same before and after. Meaning, the creation is completely irrelevant and does not do anything to or for him. Mm-hmm. As opposed to, let's say, an inventor or an artist or something. Right. Even if, at the very least, before he did it, he only potentially was able to do it, and now he actually did it. So he now is the inventor, or he is the, artist, or whatever it may be. By Hashem, it's the same atahu. You are your very essence before, after, no difference. What this means to say, just as prior to the creation of the world, then everybody will agree. Before his creation, there's nothing. Before the first tzimtzum, there was nothing other than God. Before God created this world didn't exist. Okay, that's a given. Kach, so too, gam achshav. Even now, after the story of creation, same thing. Be'emes, in truth, be'chaf hadimyon, with the letter chaf, which is used to compare. Grammatically speaking, the letter chaf at the beginning of the word means in comparison to, or like. Because now that there is a world filled with everything that it's got, a whole world with oceans and countless grains of sand and all the creatures, everything that this world contains is not truly in existence as it appears, as it appears to our eyes of flesh. Because we don't see the truth. We only see the world as a world, but we don't see the real truth. Ella, rather, Shem Ein V'Efes Alehem. In truth, this world, which seems to be an entity, seems to be an existence, it seems to be a created product, in truth, it is non-existent. It's absolutely, truly nothing. Keziv HaShemesh, like the ray of the sun, Keshu Bakadur, when it's inside the sun. And therefore we can compare it to the state of the world before the world was created. Then, even the world as it exists now, and we can say as much as we want, well, the world doesn't really exist. Okay, but at the end of the day, here we are. So we have to say, no, this world of here we are is exactly the same as how it was before he created the world. So that means that, we really are it. Because, it's like one of those things, like a joke, that you explain something to somebody and they just don't get it. So they're following the logic step by step, and at the end they say, yeah, but, and then you say, so you didn't get it. You tell someone, do you understand that there is no little man inside that little box, what they call the radio. There is no little guy inside of it. And the guy says, well, then how's the noise, how's the voice, how's it coming out? What are you talking about? Of course, there's a little guy inside the radio. So you say, no. And you explain it to him step by step. And so you follow, yes. And at the end, when...
Where's the little guy fit?
Right. Or when you convince him, that there is no little guy. So after you walk out of the room, no one's looking. So he says, it's okay, I know you're there. So you can get it. So here we're saying that this whole world really is exactly the same as before it was created. So there really is no entity. It really doesn't exist, even though we can't relate to that. Eloloi mamish, but rather this world is absolute not, v'achshavu kiloi, and now it's with a chaf of kiloi. That's the only difference. So he's making a very, very subtle distinction. We're saying that the world now is the same that Hashem is the same before and after creation. So we're saying, well, actually, what we say before he created the world, it's absolutely zero and it's non-existent. And after creation, from our perspective, that after creation, it's kiloi. It's as if it's non-existent. At the chaf, we're introducing killa, like not. Then he sends us back the reference to look in the previous mimer about the belief in Hashem, chapter 8. V'hinei, mitzvah zu, this mitzvah that we just explained, to believe that the world doesn't exist. We don't demand that of non-Jews. Bnei Noach don't have to believe that the world is such that it's non-existent.
Well, hold on. Not Bnei Noach, but if eventually, and the Yovel year gets introduced, and Mashiach comes, and everything happens the way it's supposed to, I thought we learned that the Rebbe teaches that because the Ger Toshav there in Asuri Bia, the 7 are split up from 1 to 6. And I think the Rebbe taught that the Ger Toshav type of guy is going to have to know this because he's not going to be able to partake in Shituf. In other words, isn't there either this or Shituf, basically?
Okay.
Do you see my argument?
Yeah. Well, it may be possible for a person to negate shituf and to believe just in Hashem, I guess, and still not view this world as non-existent, unless that's not really possible, because if you believe that you are here, that's a type of shituf. That means there's something other than the one and only God. And that's shituf at the end of the day. I guess, yeah. So that means that someone who's on the level of being a Ger Toshav, at that point, is able to be holding at that level. Let's see. Okay? I don't think it's going to bring Ger Toshav, but let's see if we can figure it out. So again, V'hinei, mitzvah zu, this mitzvah of believing in Achdus Hashem, to negate that there is nothing other than God. There's not a world that he created that is totally dependent on him and that he runs. That's not good enough. But that there's nothing other than him. Was given to the Jews. Lefi, Shem Chelek Havaya, because the Jews are a part of him. V'or ha'achdus meir aleihim, and this godly light of achdus, of the unification, of oneness of God, shines on them. So they're able to be holding at that level. V'lochein tzarich liyos bechinas ayin va'efes, and therefore they need to be on this level to relate that there's absolutely nothing, everything is non-existent.
What does that mean that the Jew is
Part of God?
part of God, but if there's nothing other than God, then how is the Jew any different from anything else of creation?
Nothing else exists. the Jew does exist. Why? Because he's part of the one and only God. Therefore, now let's go back to our reality, to our false reality. From our perspective, a lot of things exist. There's the Jew, there's the world, there's the nations of the world, there's everything, okay? So being that the Jew is a part of God, the only true existence is God.
Mm-hmm. I got a trick question.
And the Jew is part of that. Although down here, he perceives, what do you mean? There's lots of stuff.
I got a trick question for you.
Yeah.
So,
Who's that? Our friend?
yes.
I get it, okay.
So, Chelek in Olam Haba, a portion of the world to come, is that synonymous with the portion of Hashem? This Chelek.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to trap you.
Well,
I'm warning you, but
well,
because Hasidim Moto Olam
have a chelik,
yeah.
right. Chelik. When it comes to Olam Haba, there are two expressions used. One is chelik, one is a ben Olam Haba, son of, or a member of.
It would be a full, like probably a full. Well, this is
Right. And
you don't have to answer it now. That's an interesting.
yeah, Chelek.
Because it's saying that because of this,
Right.
because Israel is connected to Hashem, and so they have to know this stuff. And I'm wondering if the Hasidim Moto Olam will eventually.
Well, let's see. He's going to bring it in with later. He's going to bring them in.
Oh, really?
Well, I don't know about. We'll see.
Okay. Wow.
Let-
Okay.
he's
Yeah.
gonna
Let's
bring
go. Let's just. Do
Okay.
this. Sorry.
So again, Uchemoisar ba'olam, and therefore, I'm like extra in the world, irrelevant, unnecessary. And now listen to the line he says. V'loi loymar, therefore one should not say, ani, I. That's Aleph Nun Yud. Ani, I. Ella lases me ani ayin. Scramble around the same letters. And if you take the letters of ani, those three letters, and you mix them up, you spell ayin, which means not, non-existent. So the thing is to transform the ani, my feeling of self, and make it ayin, non-existent. Eshiz nitokin ich. He puts it in Yiddish. There is no I. I? Who am I? There's no I. Like Jacob said, katointi, I feel humbled, belittled. Voimer, and there's a verse that says, Hashem does not desire the Jewish people because they are so much, or there's so many, or amongst the nations. Kedepirish Rashi, as Rashi explains there. Now, Vizehu, and this is Hatulda, the outcome, the product, Hayoitzeis mi mitzvazu, which comes out from this mitzvah. Shebehamonas hayichud, in the belief of the yichud, of the oneness, of the unity of God. She'ein oid milvadoi kanal, that there's nothing other than Him, like we mentioned. Im kain, if so, tzarich li'esa adam ayin, k'mo yishu be'emes. So if so, man down here, in this reality, what do we have to work on? Becoming ayin, to be completely and absolutely non-entity, non-existent. Self-negation, as is the truth. So it's not just, well, Hashem has the absolute truth, but then he made a system, and he gave us feelings, and he made us perceive that we are here. So therefore there's a limit to how much I can negate myself. And
even obligations to other people, maybe.
Right,
Like
right.
that was a big thing becoming a father for me. It was like, oh, I can't, sell everything I own and give it to charity. It's like I have obligations.
Right, right. So there's me, there's my possessions, there's my obligations, there's my flesh and blood, there's my beloved, there's my. So it all ends up being, she said, well, I don't want to be egotistical. Okay, so now your self-centered is becoming not so egotistically self, but at the end of the day, it's still self.
Yeah. So what do you do?
So he says, what we're supposed to be doing is, in this reality that we're living in, we have to bring the realization and come and try to live up to the level of the true reality, which is from his perspective, which is, I really don't exist. And now look at these words that Tzemach Tzedek writes. V'zehu, and this is amitis hachasidus. This is the true concept of Hasidus. He knows we have all those thousands of books that Tzemach Tzedek is saying right over here. This is the true concept of what Hasidus is all about. To come to the point, to come to the realization that nothing besides God himself exists. V'ikar ha'hevdel, and the main difference, shebein sitra kedusha l'sitra achra. That's between the side of holiness and the side of the sitra achra, the other side. What's the main difference? Shebesitra achra, when it comes to the opposite of kedusha, the other side, va'afilu benoiga, even if it's not the three really bad klipas, but it's the middle one, the klipa of noiga.
Still klipa.
Sheyesham gam kin Torah. Now klipas noiga also has Torah there. Okay. Va'akol b'vchinas yesh v'davar chulu. But the point there is, when it comes to klipa, even if it's klipas noiga, it's all about existence. It exists. That's the definition of klipa. Klipa is this shell which conceals over the absolute truth of God, and it makes the whatever it is exist as an entity. Ubi kedusha, but when you're talking about absolute kedusha, lehepuch, it's exact opposite, that there's nothing existing other than God. And as it speaks a little bit about this in the mitzvah of Milah.
That's why I want to learn that, but probably won't ever get there.
So it's in the mitzvah of Milah. It is over there in chapter 3, I think. Chapter 2 and 3. So it says there, it speaks a little bit about it.
I bet you that's why it's the 8th.
Mashein kenu masailam. Okay, now we're going to get to the non-Jews. So by the Jew, what's demanded of the Jew, which is a tremendously high level, I don't think there's too many Jews which actually fulfill this mitzvah the way he's demanding it. Okay? But when you're talking about the nations of the world, u'masailam, heim bechinas yesh, they are in the aspect of being an entity, right? And even though they know, every intellectual human being knows that God created the world, and sustains it, he is making it exist, as is explained in the 25th mitzvah. That is the mitzvah of believing in God. The previous one over here, that's number 25 in the Sefer Chinuch.
Belief in God?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Not Achdus Hashem, but Anoich Hashem
Yeah, this
Elokecha.
is the same stuff from the Siddur and Dach and the word the Tana.
Okay.
This is interesting.
Aval, however, Karu le Elokad Elokaya. The mistake is the nations of the world, the intelligent people, the ones who believe in God and believe that He is making the world exist, they call Him the God of gods. V'hem yesh la'atzmam, and they are an existence for themselves. And what this means to say, they are denying this wondrous, this amazing point. They miss this point. This point is what the nations of the world deny. Which comes out of this mitzvah of Achdus. So they got the mitzvah of Hamanas Elikus. The first of the 10 commandments where God says, I am God, you are God who took you out of Egypt. They got that. They believe in God. They believe that He's creator. They believe that without Him nothing exists. That's pretty good. That they got. They're missing this mitzvah of Achdus Hashem. This point they miss. She'ein oid mamish kanal, that there's literally nothing else in addition to Him. Outside of Him, there's nothing. And says it's Tzemach Tzedek very clearly. Veheim piturim mimena. They're exempt from this mitzvah. They're not commanded to believe in Achdus Hashem. Like it says, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Lefi she'eim b'sharsham. You know why they're exempt from believing to this extent? Because in their source, their shoyresh, gamkein bivchinas pirud, they also are in this level of separation. Veinor Hashem meir bohem begolui.
Wow.
And the light of Hashem does not shine on them in a revealed way. In a way of einoid levadoi. Ela de levushim, but rather it's through garments. V'halomim and concealments, Hashem nifradim be'emes, until they truly become separated from Hashem. So that's the difference between the Jew and between the non-Jew. The non-Jew, Hashem made it such that he actually is separated from Hashem, and therefore he becomes this separate entity, even though in reality that can't really be. Whereas the Jew, even down here, when from his perspective it looks like that, from Hashem's perspective, there is no such thing. It's as if there's no tzimtzum as far as the Jew is concerned. It's like God made this whole system, starting with the really early tzimtzum, and the world of Atzilus and all that, and he has this whole Seder Ishtalshalus of one level, lower and lower and lower yet, and lower until he... And there's one exception. The Jew. He's not part of that whole system. I mean, he's got a physical body.
The Jew's root is through the revealed, whereas the nation's root is through the concealed.
Are we talking about the animal soul here?
No. Godly soul. Yeah.
Well, the godly soul can't be talked about here.
Why not?
Because he's talking about a soul for...
The Jew's godly soul.
Umot ha'olam.
No. Umot ha'olam, they...
So he's talking about a godly soul and an animal soul.
Of who? So about the difference between why are the Jews commanded and the non-Jews not? This is because the Jew's source of his godly soul is from, whereas the non-Jew, they are coming through these, God relates to them and created them through these concealments.
And he doesn't say noiga here. What he does,
Or yes, it says even in noiga, where there's Torah there.
But what I was getting at is that non-Jews' animal soul comes from noiga.
Okay.
But through mitzvahs, a Jew can get more in contact with the Jewish soul, or the godly soul. And
say that again?
Okay. So I'm trying to go through the process here. Let's see, we got that in the noiga. Because it's klipa, so the process of mitzvot, once a Jewish child is born, the process of mitzvot disconnect him from this, I shouldn't say disconnect, I'm probably using the wrong terms here, but bear with me. Disconnect him with the klipa soul, the animal soul, and bring him fuller into the godly soul. That is the halik of Hashem.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying to clarify that myself.
Okay. Well, he wasn't really saying that. Now, look what he says further. V'hinei, fourth line. Yesh oivdei kechabiv u'mazolis. Amongst the nations of the world, you actually have idolaters. Shemakcheshim b'Hashem, that they actually deny God. Like the verse says in Jeremiah.
This is interesting.
Kichshu b'Hashem, they deny Hashem. V'yemru loihu, and they say, no, he isn't. So that's not regular Ummah Sa'ilam. That's idolaters.
Yeah.
They deny Hashem.
So he's talking about different people,
Right.
different types of non.
Right, Zelaima. What is it? What are we talking about? These people. Shemakchishim gam ken b'mitzvah chafhei hanal. They're even denying the 25th mitzvah. It's not like they say, well, yeah, God is the God of gods. No, there are people that say, no, they don't believe in him. He isn't. They totally deny him. Even though we said every intellectual, rational person believes in God, but you have all these idolaters.
So I think what I'm trying to get at is I'm trying to find the Hasidim Oto Olam in here, and I think his Hasidim Oto Olam is actually the Oto Olam he's talking
Well,
about there, but I'm
let's
not
see,
sure 'cause
let's
he brings in the Noiga there.
Asher heim mechuyavim gam ken ba. Now they're actually obligated in this 25th mitzvah of believing in God, which they are denying.
Oh, whoa, that's a big deal.
What? Every human being is obligated to believe in God.
But it's not a mitzvah
Sure it is.
to believe.
Well, they can't worship away the Zara.
Yeah.
Well, what's that? That's the negative way of saying that, don't forget, all the Shev Mitzvahs B'nai Noach are all in the negative, right? 6 out of 7 are in the negative. Okay, but the implication there is that they do have to believe in God.
I thought that was just for the Ger Toshav. I thought the Ben Noach doesn't. Okay.
V'zeh haya inyan Sancheriv melech Ashur. And this was the idea of the king of Assyria, Sancheriv, the king of Ashur. Shesholach l'chariv kil chai. He sent to blaspheme the living God. And therefore, v'lachin nemar olav, therefore it says about him a very interesting verse in Yeshayahu, Isaiah. Thank you. Isaiah 7:20. Yeshayahu, Perek Zion, Pasuk Chaf. Okay. Sounds like this. Speaking about Assyria's attack and defeat. It shall be on that day that Hashem will whistle to the fly that is at the far end of Egypt's rivers, and to the bee that is in the land of Assyria. They will come, and all will encamp in the desolate valleys, in the crags of the rocks, and upon all the brushes and all the bushes. Then verse 20. Vayemahu, on that day, Yigalach Adnei, Hashem will shave, etc. The etc. is with a large razor those who crossed the Euphrates River, B'melech Ashur, with the king of Assyria. Es haroish, the head, V'sar haraglaim, and the hair of the legs. V'gam esazok tispe, and the beard as well will be destroyed. And according to the commentary, The hair of the head represents the king, of the legs his soldiers, and of the beard his officials. All will be shorn, they will all perish. Why? Because this king of Ashur, his whole thing was to deny Hashem completely.
But that's a different mitzvah. He's going against a different mitzvah than believing in Hashem.
What's he doing? Blaspheming.
He's blaspheming.
Well, that is because he's denying Hashem. It goes together. That goes together with it. V'ho'inyan, and the Tzemach Tzedek explains, what's this all about? What's the reason that there are found such evil, wicked sinners, that they're actually sinning with their souls? So bad. Zehu, the reason why they are here, why they're such people, what's the cause? Lefisha klipa misdamis likedusha. Because the klipa makes itself similar to the kedusha. Meaning, vine, k'moisha b'kedusha, just as when it comes to kedusha. Ho'elikis, the godly, holiness, the truth, yadua sheyesh b'chinas hamshacha, it's known that there is this idea of drawing down, godliness, hanikris b'shem sairis, and that is called hair. Mashakasuv, as it says in Daniel, v'atik yoimin yosiv, and the ancient one of days is sitting, levushe, his garment, kislag chivar, like white snow, useh areshe, and the hair of his head, ki imar nakei, like wool. That's the famous verse, Daniel 7:9. Where this is describing a very, very high level of godliness. I watched as thrones were set up. V'atik yemin yasiv, and the one of ancient days sat. Levushe kistak chivar, his garment was white as snow, usar reishe kamar nekei, and the hair of his head like clean wool. So hair is analogy used here in this verse, because just as hair comes out of the body or out of the skull, and each hair is hollow, so it represents the idea of being a pipe to draw the godliness. That's how it is in Kedusha. V'hainu, meaning, when there needs to be a drawing from the level of God's chachma, his wisdom. And there's absolutely no understanding of his chachma. We, with our human minds, cannot possibly understand and perceive his chachma. In order for there to be from his chachma in the worlds of Atzilus, Bria, etc. In order for us to receive his chachma, there has to be a tremendous concealment and contraction in a most external way, and from the extra part of the intellect, which is what the hair coming out of the skull represents. It's like, so to say, the extra part of the brain power of the intellect, which is like totally non-intelligent. You don't say, oh, that person is so smart because you could tell in their hair, or if you cut off their hair, you don't get any of the brain in it, even though it sort of does come out of the skull, which is covering the brain. So it's representing the overflow and the overspillage and the flow from the brain. That's what hair symbolizes.
That's what I told my parents when I stopped cutting my beard. I was like, I can't stop it. Just intelligence is the flowing.
Because if the essence of God's wisdom would be revealed, would shine, it would be absolutely impossible to create Chachma of the worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya. It's too intense coming from his essence. In order to make lower levels of Chachma, relatively speaking, of course, it has to go through this contraction. And this drawing down is called hair. Because hair represents drawing this energy in a way of separation from its source. From which it comes, which is the brain. Because hair is only from the extra parts of the brain. And therefore, when the hair is cut, it doesn't hurt at all. If it was part of your brain, it should hurt. No, because it's such an external extension that it doesn't even hurt. And therefore, from this can come into existence something which is called Chachma, but it's a completely different type of Chachma. Qualitatively speaking, it's totally different. Same word, Chachma, and it comes from that ultimately, but it's completely different. It is not at all of the essence of its source, and it doesn't have a relationship to its source in a way of cause and effect. Keep going back as far back as you want. You will not get from this Chachma, the way we have it at this level, to its essence source. Cyrus Dikna, and this is the idea of the hair of the beard, the Atika of the Ancient One, of Hashem. In order for there to be the creation, the forming of the level of Chacham of Atzilus. Which means the idea of Torah. What's Torah? It's the enclothing of God's Chachma, His absolutely infinite Chachma, His wisdom. And where does it come down to? Binyanim Gashmim, into physical things. God's Chachma and physical things, how does that go? For example, very interesting example, because this is exactly what we're doing in Rambam these days. Like the mitzvah of Peah, of leaving off the edge of your field for the poor. Who says to do that? It's a mitzvah from God in the Torah. Field? God's Chachma has fields? Or trumas, to give the various tithes to the Levi, to the poor. Talking about giving parts of your field, giving grain, giving fruits. What is going on over here? That's God's Chachma?
Or just writing it down.
Huh?
Being able to write it down.
Or the whole concept.
Yeah, like on parchment.
Aldei Cyrus, this all comes through hair. These Aldei Cyrus Elu. Vem Cyrus Levanim, and their white hair. Kihu Makar Harachamim, because he is the source of mercy.
White hair?
Yeah, it's the pasuk in Daniel is describing him as having white hair, like
the wool,
clean wool.
Like clean wool. So there's a difference between white hair and black hair.
Yeah, black is the darker, represents more severity. The white represents more
Interesting.
rachamim. Now yes. Derech zeh, and similarly, Cyrus the Zah, the hair of the 6 midos, of the 6 character traits of kindness, severity, etc., shchoiris, they're black. Kiddichsiv,
This is a young guy. This is
Kiddichsiv, like the verse says, shchoiris ka'irev. The pasuk in
more
Shir
emotional,
Hashirim.
more emotional guy, right? Maybe
Younger one.
the younger guy. This is what's his name?
Roishe kesem paz kvutzesev taltalim shchoiris ka'irev. His opening words were finest gold, his crowns hold mounds of statutes written in the raven black flame. Or literally, it's black as the raven. So there's the concept of white hair or black hair. Tzimtzumim gedolim b'yoser. In other words, these are very, very intense contractions, concealments, condensings. Lahavos baligvul b'biyah imidos v'isparach shem lakus. In order to create limited beings in the worlds of Bria, Yetzir, and Asira, coming from Hashem's midos, which are godly. V'chein, and likewise, saris denukva adumim. There's also red hair.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yeah. So there's white, there's black, now there's red hair.
I have both. I have all three.
Kamashikasuv, as another verse says in Shir Hashirim. The verse states as follows.
There's names for these two types of people. I forget off the top of my head. Oh, the Zeron pin, right?
That was the
That's the
black
young
hair.
guy.
Yeah. So the verse says as follows. Roishech olayich ka karmel, v'dalas roishech kar goman, melchas u'bratim. The godly name on your head is as mighty as Carmel. Your crowning braid is royal purple. Royal purple. Veheim tzimtzumim gedolim yoser. These are even more intense, more contractions, more condensed. Lahavis tvarim gashmiyim, to create physical things. For loymar, and to say yehi or yirakia shein milad yoita. For God to say, let there be light, let there be the heavens. These are words of a simple person. Now, creation is such a degradation for him. To be a creator, yes.
So my beard shows a degradation of something about myself. It was got red in it. Is that what it is?
All of this whole idea of the hair is representing the idea of him coming down and contracting himself. V'hinei, haklipa mistam miskamkein lashpia mena. So the whole idea, we said that the klipa does the same thing. It's akin to the kedusha. So in kedusha you have hair, white hair, black hair, red hair. You have all these different things, which is all representing the external and the most far removed, but coming from the intellect. From Hashem's chachma comes this. Similarly in klipa. They also are comparing to themselves to kedusha. Lashpia mimena gamkein bivchina sayris. That they should also have influence from them in a way of hair. And at that point, the flow of energy that comes from the klipa is in a way of skipping, bedilug ha'erech, b'vchinas richuk me'amakar kanal, and it becomes very far from its source. U'mistayif mizeh, and what branches off from this, hisavus u'meisoilam, the existence, the making of the nations of the world, akayfim b'Hashem legamri, that totally deny Hashem, the ones that are oivd avodah zarah. Because if the flow from their source would go in a systematic manner, it would go level after level, in a way of cause and effect, then all the nations of the world without exception would acknowledge God's existence, and they would all call him the God of gods. No one would be in total denial. How are they in total denial? Because just like by Kedusha, there's this jump, and it doesn't come in a way of cause and effect. So too by Klipa, they jump so far, and it doesn't go in a way of cause and effect.
Is these three different colors associated with the three different levels that he was talking about?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because they know that Hashem makes them exist. But because it sends its detached, far off ideas, in a way of jumping and skipping, it's not that you can go back and trace back the steps, because it goes in a way of beyond. So what resulted from this is those that are in absolute denial. And then those are the ones that don't have a chelik to Olam Haba. So that's like
so he is saying.
So when he says Umas Olam, he means Chasidim Umas Olam.
Yeah, okay.
That's what it seems
thank
like.
you for,
Yeah, so you were right. So in other words, the ones that are the Oivde Avodah Zara, the Akum, Oivde Kachavim Mazalois, they're the ones that don't even have a chelik in Olam Haba. For Lachain, and therefore Lasid Lavai, in the future, like the pasuk said about Sancheriv, the pasuk from Yirmiyahu, Yigalach Hashem b'melech Ashur es Cyrus shalayitzmechu oid Cyrus maklipos. Therefore Hashem will shave the hair, so they should no longer grow from klipa. Because what is the result of those hairs? An absolute denial of Hashem, like the king of Ashur. It is sufficient for the klipa to have nations of the world which acknowledge and agree in the existence of Hashem, which they don't come from these hairs, and they will exist in the future to come when Hashem is going to shave Sancheriv. That's talking about the nations of the world which are Oivdei Avodah Zarah, which totally deny Hashem. But the other ones which call him the God of gods, that's their mistake. They will remain.
Interesting.
Because they acknowledge Hashem. And they're going to remain because they're not doing anything wrong for them. Mm-hmm. They were not commanded in Achdus Hashem. Mm-hmm. But we Jews, we have a doubled over goodness.
Yeah.
We're so fortunate that we were commanded in this mitzvah of Achdus Hashem. That for us, there's going to be in the future, in the times of Mashiach, the most internal godly revelation. As the pasuk says, and one will say on that day, behold, here is our Alekim, that we've hoped for him. Al pasuk ein by Niru, as it says in mitzvah number 9, based on the verse in Yeshaya that eye to eye will see, that the reward that each one gets is according to what they did in this world. It's midah keneged midah. In other words, it's a measure for a measure.
In the world to come?
Yeah. In the times of Mashiach, the payment will be measure for a measure. So those that are from the Oiv David Zaro, Kavod Kechav Mazalis, no reward. They're going to be totally destroyed. The Umay Sa'ilam, they will be rewarded according to what they have, Emunah in Hashem. And Yisrael is going to be on a much, much higher level because they also have Achdus Hashem.
But he called them not just Umoy Sa'olam, but the Umoy Sa'olam that believe in Hashem. Would that be like kind of like his way of describing it, rather than the Umoy Sa'olam that are... I'm trying to be precise in words because some people... It's phrased differently in other Hasidic works.
Seems like when it says U'Misalam here, it means Chasidim Misalam.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I want you to basically clarify, because... And then the
I'm
Umoy
not sure though, because the Rambam speaks of the pious among the nations of the world as having...
Accepted because Moshe through...
But they're not allowed Shituf. That group. So it's almost like a fourth group, it would seem. Possibly.
Where does it
I'm
say
not
the Hasidim Olam are forbidden from Shituf?
Well, I think maybe we learned that because Rambam says that the nations are not allowed Shituf, but here we're learning that the nations are allowed Shituf, so is there just different ways of understanding this rule for the nations, or is it two different groups that some are allowed Shituf and some are not?
I'm going to say that because they're still Umot Olam, even though they're Chasidei Umot Olam, they're probably still allowed Shituf, but they don't have the clarity of the mitzvah that Jews have. So they're not going to pursue it. Well, I shouldn't say they're not going to, but they don't have a mitzvah to, so it's not.
Interesting.
That's the way I've seen it, because the way other people describe the Hasidim Olam are